We really appreciate you guys being here. It does mean a lot to us. Thank you, guys. I'm Caleb. I'm one of the grandsons. It's an emotional day for us, and so some crying. There's some smiles, some laughing. So we encourage you guys to have all those emotions as we go through. Cameron, my brother, is going to have some remarks here shortly, and then afterwards, if anyone else has remarks or comments, anything to say about Pawpaw or Weldon, Pawpaw as he is to me, we'd invite anyone else who'd like to have remarks as well. That would appreciate that. We'd appreciate that. If I may, I'm going to get started. I'll start the ceremony with a reading of Pawpaw's obituary. Weldon Rasco Ray, 95, entered his heavenly home peacefully on Friday, August 9th, 2024, surrounded by his family at home in Bentonville, Arkansas. He was born in Amarillo, Texas, November 18th, 1928, to Schrader Coleman Ray and Elva Martha Ray. Weldon lived in Bushland in Potter County all of his life until September 2016, when he moved to live across the street from his daughter and son-in-law, my mom and dad, in Bentonville, Arkansas. He graduated from Amarillo High School in 1947. Weldon married the love of his life, Rosalie Campbell, on June 8, 1947, and they enjoyed 77 years of marriage together, working side by side. His early years were filled with a true love for farming and for cattle. Weldon took a lot of pride in his welding work and was a meticulous perfectionist in caring for his equipment. He lived his life around John Deere equipment, down to his last John Deere, a riding lawnmower. Weldon farmed and ranched in Bushland until his retirement in 2000. He could fix anything. A smaller version of Weldon's shop and tools were moved to Arkansas when they moved in 2016, where he was able to continue his woodworking hobby. One thing he was really proud of, he outfitted their home in Bentonville with roll-out drawers in all the cabinets, and really helped us for Granny to be able to have better access. Weldon was a member of the Church of Bushland, and he was very active in the Bushland community all of his life. He served on the Bushland Grain Co-op Board of Directors, the Bushland ISD School Board, the Bushland Water Supply Board, and the Bushland Volunteer Fire Department. He loved family time, and he cherished all the time he was able to spend with his family, especially during the last 8 years in Bentonville. It's a time we really appreciated as well being nearby. He was preceded in death by his brother, Earl Ray, sister, Leona Cooksey, and their spouses. Weldon survived by his wife, Rosalie, daughter and son-in-law, Carrie Lee and Christopher McGee of Bentonville, Arkansas, grandsons Caleb McGee of Mechanicsville, Virginia, and Cameron and Laura McGee of Lowell, Arkansas. Cameron and Laura also have two great-grandsons, Jack Weldon McGee and Luke Wren McGee. Now we're going to listen to a song by Alan Jackson, Stroll Over Heaven with You. If you guys can listen to these words with us.
Good morning, everyone. It's so good to be together like this. Thank you all for coming. I hope to give a few remarks to honor what I think is a special, one-of-a-kind man, Weldon Ray. I'm Weldon's other grandson. Kind of catch you up here. That was my older brother, Caleb. I think y'all know this part, but Weldon married Rosalie, and then they had Carrie Lee. She married Christopher. I'm the youngest of the two grandsons. We're the Arkansans here in the room. I'll go a little further if you haven't followed past that. Then I married Laura, and we have two boys. Our firstborn, Jack Weldon, and then we've adopted Luke Wren to join our family as well. What I wanted to talk about today was what I've learned from Weldon, from my papa. And I hope just by sharing what I've learned that maybe it would inspire you to learn some of the same lessons. One of my favorite scriptures is in John 15. It talks about, I'm the vine, you're the branches. If you abide in me and I in you, you'll bear much fruit. Mom had that in the bathroom growing up, so I read that one a lot. And I've got that one down. I'm quite a bit younger than Papa. I'm 34 this year. Papa was 95. And just mathematically, when you live to be 95, someone younger than you is probably going to give the remarks at your funeral. And I think the sweet part of that is when we think about John 15, it's really the fruit of our lives that matters. I think a lot of us start out with good intentions. Some people lose their way. But you really can't deny the fruit at the end of someone's life. And so as I was preparing to say a few things, I thought, well, I can only cover a third of 95 years. But I thought maybe that's the third that really matters, because we're not measuring what he thought he could do. We're measuring what I get to see as the fruit of his life. Some things I learned from Papa. I learned the value of hard work. And I learned that over time, you could steadily build a lot of things. Papa was a hard worker, and he started, even as a young boy, there was an experiment station up by their house, and he's been talking the last 2 weeks about Brother Reader, and how Brother Reader taught him a lot of skills, and I think we can learn from mentors in our life like that, even at a young age. I learned what marriage looks like to one woman for your whole life. I learned what it's like to be interwoven into a community. He was really woven into Bushland, and even around Amarillo, people knew his name. He lived in Potter County essentially his entire life. Papa also taught me, just by watching him, about resting. And I think that's a tough balance between being a hard worker and also resting. But I saw him in the afternoons grab a Diet Coke with Granny and a granola bar and sit in their little green swing in the backyard and taking a rest, even on the busiest of days. Papa was super brand loyal. We made sure we put John Deere in his obituary because he's super brand loyal to John Deere. I don't know why that green paint just meant something more to him, but I think for Papa it was a sense of pride. And I learned from watching him what it meant to take care of what you're proud of. Papa really cared for his things. I'm a business guy. I'm an entrepreneur. We call things assets. And I think when you really care for your assets, it shows where your heart is. And I think there was no greater asset than Rosalie, and how he cared for Rosalie more than anything. Little things about Papa that add up to be a lot of things when you're 95. He ate well. I never knew him to smoke. I don't think he ever did. I never saw him take a drink. I don't think he ever had a drink. And that's extreme discipline. But I think he did that for Granny. One of the verses you hear a lot of times at weddings is Ephesians 5, and it talks about a man caring for his body, caring for his wife as though he cares for his body, that no person would ever harm their body. They would care for their body, and it says care for your wife just as you would care for your body. And Papa cared for his wife and his body because I think he understood that that meant that they got more time together, and they got a lot of time together. And I'm thankful for the discipline that he had to care for himself and for Granny. When we were getting married, there's a lot of new books and teaching on don't be codependent. And, you know, if you're a really strong individual, you'll have a strong marriage. But that's not what I learned from Papa. Weldon and Rosalie are very codependent. They need each other. They love each other. They are, as the Bible says, one flesh. And so I remember when we were going through training for marriage, just thinking, yeah, I've actually seen this play out pretty well. And I think I know what we need to do. We need to really rely on each other. Papa really cared about his appearance. You know, when they went to town, even if it was just to go to the depot to get some bolts, you know, he went to town. And Granny pressed his shirts, and he always looked his best, and they both did. I remember when we would leave, we would come visit, and we would leave, and those two would always be standing in the driveway as we'd back out to head to Arkansas, just waving and holding hands. I didn't get to know him early on, but I understand he was a firefighter, and he had incredible courage. I think it was volunteering there in Bushland as a firefighter. I don't know those stories. Like Caleb said, anybody else can come up and share a few stories afterwards if you'd like. But I did see his courage. And the one story, the first thing I put in my notes 2 weeks ago when he said he wanted me to do the service, I put this story that I think I've told more business people and friends and coworkers and stuff than anybody. So I'll tell this brief story of his courage. I was probably about Jack's age. He's turning 6 next week. I think I was 6 or 7. And we were walking from the house to the detached garage. You know, you had that detached garage. There's a little walk there, there's a little sidewalk. And if you've ever walked that walk, there's a big tree, or there was, on your right as you're walking from the house to the detached, if you know what I'm talking about. And it had big roots. And I was walking behind him. And as we passed the tree, he just looked over his shoulder and said, "Keep walking, Cam." And I thought that was a silly thing to say. "Papa, we're walking, I'm walking, you're walking, we're walking. What are you saying? We'll keep walking." But when we got to the shop, he said, "Just wait right here." And he reached inside. And what I hadn't seen was when I passed that tree, there was a huge rattlesnake right in the roots of that tree. And it blended in perfectly with those roots. And so that's why he said, "Just keep walking, Cam," just so I wouldn't see the snake. And so we get to the detached. He reaches inside, grabs a shovel. And every time I tell a story, it's just like this. He just, from the detached to the tree, just step, 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 boom, just chopped the head off of this snake. And there was no pause in that. It was just step, 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 boom, the snake was dead. And that's courage. I don't know many men my age or in many generations who will just not pause before striking the head off of a rattlesnake in Amarillo, Texas. He didn't hesitate. And I think that's what courage looks like, is he knew the right thing to do. He knew the cost if he didn't. And he knew that if he paused, then that could jeopardize things. So he just step, 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 boom, the snake was dead. Then he stretched that snake out on the sidewalk, made sure it was good and dead, chopped the rattler off of it. And this is kind of the weirdest part of the story. We'd go in the shop. He got a big can of Peter Pan peanut butter jar off the shelf, took off the lid, and dropped the rattler in it. I don't think I had seen this can at that age. I hadn't realized what that was. It was about 3/4 full of other snakes, rattlers. And I just remember being 7 and just being like, oh my gosh, that's how he's done this before. You know, he's done this before. That's how he had the courage. And then he set it on the shelf next to a full one. He had 2. And I thought, that's courage. I think courage comes from confidence of just doing that a lot. But that's a special generation. That's a different generation than I'm a part of. Later in life, he had to start to let go of things. I remember he had this farm sale in like 93 or something. I was too young to remember, but we have a VHS tape of it because the news showed up, and my brother Caleb, in his Arkansas accent on the news, says, "We're having a sale." And it's this cute thing that we watched it over and over as a kid. And I didn't realize at the time, but that sticks with me now, that he must have taken pretty good care of his assets if And he must have had a lot more than he let on. He was a pretty humble man. If when he had a yard sale, the news showed up. Laura and I have yard sales. The news does not come to our yard sales. And so he must have had a lot of stuff and taken really good care of it for the news to show up. But my childhood was spent in a green GMC pickup. Every time we'd go to town, for some reason, he loved a crisp $50 bill. And I learned that, and I've carried that tradition on in other parts of my life. No matter where we went, I don't know what he was doing with the change, but he always handed the person a crisp $50 bill everywhere we went. He loved that. He loved the rodeo. He loved watching the Rangers on TV. He loved watching the Cowboys lose on TV. He loved RFD. At their house, he loved that little red barn. He loved his number 2 van. He loved the green grass in that oasis that he had created in their backyard in the middle of the desert. But he had to let go of all of that. He had accumulated a lot, they'd say from the Depression, just kind of training them. But he had to let go of a lot. And that's what we're doing today. We're letting go of a lot. But he was willing to do that because he knew that it was better that he let go. And that's how I feel today, that we're letting go of something that we love because we know that it's better. Statistically, I actually couldn't find statistics on how many marriages make it to 77. I guess that's not common enough that anybody's even done the stats on that. But you can imagine how rare that is, not just from divorce, but just from health and getting married at 16 and the numbers that it takes to do that, and not dying in a world war or something like that. I mean, to have 77 years, the stats are incredible. Living to 95, stats are incredible. And so as I was reflecting here and closing out my notes, I thought, well, how did he do it? Because I want to learn from him. And how did he live that long? And the conclusion I came to was 2 things that I wanted to share with you today. I think that Papa lived richly, and I think that he lived freely. And I'll explain. I think that Papa lived rich in relationship. And that's evident today as people are here. It's evident of all the people who couldn't be here today that he's outlived. He really lived rich in relationship. A lot of that is thanks to Granny and the time that she would spend inviting people in and constantly on the phone and updating folks and say, honey, pick up the phone. And she was keeping them rich in relationship. A song they love that we played earlier, Living on Love, talks about not having much. And he used to joke that they didn't have much, but they had each other. And I know a lot of people who have a lot of money who are not rich. And I think that he was rich in relationship. So I think that he lived rich in relationship. But I also think that Papa lived freely. He lived free in his activity out here in Amarillo. A couple of years ago, before y'all moved, somehow we got word that he had constructed some scaffolding around the little red barn, and you guys were like 15 feet in the air painting the red barn, just free as a bird at like whatever age you guys were. And I remember thinking, what are y'all doing? But he was a free man, and he was going to paint that barn. And I'm sure that free lifestyle has been a challenge for him these past few years, where he's not been as free to live freely. But I praise God that his legacy lives on, that his soul is free from this body. It was time for his body to go. He's been saying himself these past few weeks, 95 seems like an amazing accomplishment. He just keeps saying 95 is pretty good. But his legacy lives on. It lives on in my mother, his daughter. It lives on in me. And I know that it'll live on in his bloodline of Jack Weldon down here. We know that being absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And I accept today that it was time, that it's time to let go. But I know that his legacy will live on, and I know that that Mom didn't stay on the farm. The farm life is not for her, and I am the opposite of a farmer. I'm a city slicker, and I can barely do anything on a farm. But for some reason, through those generations, God has made Jack Weldon just like Papa. Loves animals. Natural at fixing stuff. The memory of an elephant in this boy. And so I know that Papa's legacy is going to live on no matter how it shapes up through Mom and through me down to Jack. But that's what I wanted to share today. I wanted to share what I had learned from Weldon Ray, a way of life, a way to have a marriage of 77 years, a way to take care of myself, to take care of my bride, just like these two did in their final days here on earth together. I want to carry myself the way that Papa did and have the work ethic that he did and learn to rest the way that he did. And so I close today by saying, Papa, I say thank you. Thank you because you showed me the way. I'll learn from you, and I can't wait to make you proud. If anyone else would like to say anything, we're gonna sing 2 verses of a hymn here in a minute, but we just didn't want to rush out of here. If anybody else wanted to share a story or a memory or anything, you're welcome to come up, and after it's been quiet for a few seconds, then we'll move on with the song. But you take your time if you want to come up. Thank you.
I'll jump in here. Good job, Cameron. Good job. I was listening to Cameron's remarks. I didn't get a chance to talk about what he was going to talk about beforehand as we were traveling in. But I've got a different view on the taking care of yourself, Cameron. I know that Papa loves some apple pie. He loved Granny's cookies. He had his Diet Coke in the afternoon, but I remember when I was a kid, he always had his glass container of Skittles beside his chair as well. So I knew where to get the treats at Granny and Papa's house. I had a chance to reflect back on a lot of memories with Papa, with Granny, in Bushland. I thought it was interesting as I was flying in yesterday, how I can have a connection to a place that, I shouldn't, but it means something here. I think it's because it means something to Granny and Papa. But the word that came to mind when I thought about Papa and all these memories is something I didn't realize at the time. Like I knew that he could fix anything. I knew that he took care of stuff. I knew that there was a right way to do things. But the word that came to mind to me was patience. And maybe as we get older, we realize that patience is tough. It's really hard. Cameron, we're subdivision kids from Arkansas, city slickers, as Cameron put it. But Papa was patient with us. We'd go feed the animals, and we didn't know what we were doing. We were probably holding things up and maybe putting ourselves or Papa in danger by the way we were out there. But Papa was always patient. He involved us. I remember we would make these. I think they're called salt licks. These we take a tire and turn it inside out and make this base that is something that is probably put together half-heartedly by a lot of people. Papa took a lot of pride in these salt licks, and so that was one thing I remember with patience is we'd be out there messing with his tools and his shop that he kept real meticulous, and he was just always patient with us. And that's what stood out to me is with Papa how remarkable that was, how he could be patient with us kids that didn't know what we were doing. And the lessons that Cameron learned are the same that I learned, but I really appreciate Papa's patience, and that's something that I deal with on a daily basis, how to be patient with others, and that's something that I'll take as a memory and try to live on Papa's legacy. If anyone else had to say something, you're welcome to. Earlier, but the microphone is just talk like normal is what Cameron told me to do.
Well, I'm Nick Blassingame. I'm a nephew to Rosalind Weldon, my mom's Rosalie's older sister, but we'd always come to over here in the summer to visit my grandparents here in Canyon, but we'd always spend some time out in Bushland with them and stuff. And I remember many times, you know, coming out there as a young person and everything. And one time, I think maybe I was in 6th, 7th grade, something like that, but they lived out on the Lyon place, and Jim Lyon had 2 sons, Jimmy and Sam. And Sam was about my age, maybe a year older, and we'd run around and do stuff together, messing around, getting in trouble and stuff. And one time we got a rope. Weldon had some calves or something other there in the corrals, and because back then they were raising registered Hereford cattle and stuff. And Sam and I got a rope, and we decided we'd rope one. And we tried, and we finally roped him, and we couldn't hold on to him. And he run around the corral. He broke through the fence and went out in the pasture and everything with the other cattle. So we had to go find Weldon. He had to saddle up Dandy, find his horse then, I think it was Dandy, and go rope the calf and bring him back into the corral. And Weldon, I imagine we got in a little trouble, but we didn't get a very bad beating and stuff. But times like that, and then going back and forth, checking the irrigation water, and sometimes one time we was riding in the back of the pickup, and we'd picked up a bunch of dirt clods at one of the irrigation pumps and stuff, and we tossed them off the back of the thing going down the Farm to Market Road. And I guess I got dizzy watching the road or something, and I fell out, but I always said my sister pushed me out. And then my mom had already gone down to Canyon to stay with her grandparents, and Rosalind Weldon had to take me down to the hospital here in Canyon, and it wound up I had a little concussion, so I had to stay at my grandparents a few extra days. I was supposed to have gone back, I was in the middle of baseball season, but had to stay a little longer. But remember things like that, going out and checking the water and stuff. And I remember sometimes at night when Weldon was going out and check the water and stuff, he'd always take a package of saltine crackers with him and we'd have it in the pickup to kind of chew on and stuff. So it's wonderful memories. He'll be truly missed.
My daddy was a special man. I will always be a daddy's girl. But one thing we learned after Caleb was born. So Caleb, his first grandson, was born on my dad's birthday. It was not planned. I was induced due to fetal stress. He was born at 11:07 p.m. We were beginning to wonder if I was going to make it. The doctor said yes, and so we did. Then when Mickey Mouse turned 60, we learned that Dad and Mickey Mouse were the same age. Mickey Mouse was created the same year my daddy was born. So my dad and Mickey Mouse and Caleb all share a birthday together. And so that was kind of a fun little fact that we learned later in life. And then to have Jack Weldon carry on Daddy's first great-grandson have his name. So his first grandson was born on his birthday. His first great-grandson carries on his name. So that's kind of special to us. As Cameron was talking, I thought of a couple of other things, and now I can't remember exactly what else I was going to comment on, but talked about meticulously caring for his equipment, and there's a couple of gentlemen sitting over there that can attest to you don't run the tractor over with diesel. If you do, you clean it up. You do not go back to the field with diesel on the hood. And as Nick was talking about clods on the road, you clean the plows off before you drove down the road because you didn't clods, didn't leave dirt going down the road, you know. So Dad was very meticulous about caring for his equipment. Being an only child, I've said I'm mama's girl and daddy's boy. And so like I say, I am a daddy's girl. And I helped him side by side, the three of us in the pickup. Many, many happy memories. But I worked on the farm with them. I learned to set tubes. I couldn't set those 2-inch tubes. My hand wasn't big enough, but I could set the little ones. We moved irrigation pipe. I drove the tractor some. The grain cart was my buggy when we were during harvest, and Daddy had 2 combines, and there was one year that he didn't have a hired hand. I was in college, and I came home from college, and I was working at Production Credit in the summer. I had worked at Production Credit my senior year of high school, gone to school half a day, worked half a day. And he said, "I've got to have another combine driver." And I said, "Not it." He said, "You're it." I said, "Mm-mm." I said, "I have to go to work." He said, "I'll go talk to James. I need a combine driver." So I said, he went and talked to my boss, and he said, "I need Curly to help drive the combine." And so he said, "Sure, not a problem." I said, and all my life, I'd heard, you guys over there can attest to this, now you can stop a combine up and flat. You gotta listen to it. And I thought, listen to a combine? So I said, "Okay, Daddy, I will drive the combine, but you have," now remember, this is a long time ago. This is in probably 1980. So, there weren't cell phones. There weren't 2-way radios like we have now. I said, "Okay, Daddy, for me to run that combine, you got to put a CB radio in that combine. So when I hear something, I can call you," because he ran the 105 that was in front, and I ran the 95 with the 14-foot header behind him. And so I knew if there was a problem, there wasn't anybody catching him to tell him, but I needed to be able to call him and tell him. So he put a CB radio in that combine, and I cut wheat, and I didn't stop up that combine. But in life you learn to do things that you think, I can never do that, but I did. And so I think that, Dad had a lot of confidence in me and being his helper. And so, just a lot of happy memories, and these last 8 years have been good. And Cameron talked about 95 was old enough, and in these last weeks, as we had 5 admits since the end of March into the hospital, we would go into the ER, the doctor's office would call, or they would send us, and we'd go to the ER, and he'd say, 95's long enough to live. 95's long enough to live. And so he was ready. We will miss him, but he was ready. He lived a full life. I'm so thankful. Daddy did a lot of things. You hear in life people dress to the nines. My daddy liked to do things on the nines. He married my mom on June the 8th. But on June the 9th of 1997, one day after their 50th anniversary, he had his heart attack. On December 19th of that year, he had quadruple bypass. On January the 9th of 2000, he went into cardiac arrest, and we got his ICD. And he finished his race on August the 9th, 2024.
Anyone else before we sing a song together? Okay, let's sing one together. You'll stand, let's sing this in together. We'll do 2 verses.